Well, welcome to week 5, everybody, of our White Flag Devotionals. Thanks for tuning in today. It's Monday, March the 15th. We're halfway through the month of March already, and we're going to be reading this morning from Matthew chapter 26, going from verses 57 through 68. Let's take a look. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 came forward and declared, "This fellow said, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days.'" Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him, "I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. "But I say to all of you, in the future, you will see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" "He's worthy of death," they answered. They spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, "Prophesy to us, Christ. Who hit you?" Well, this whole story here is about Jesus after he had been arrested at the Garden of Gethsemane. The disciples, we know from the story, all fled the scene, and he was arrested and taken before Caiaphas, the high priest. Things were looking very, very bleak, to say the least. And Peter is stealthily following the whole scenario from a distance. He wants to see what happens, and so he's just sort of lurking in the shadows and following along. And in today's story, after just going through it, I hope you can see the same sort of theme emerging that I'm seeing as we talk about surrender, and that is the word restraint. That's the thing that comes to my mind when I look at this story. You know, the religious leaders are looking to use anything they can against Jesus, and finally one witness comes forward and uses Jesus' words out of context, the whole idea of him destroying the temple and rebuilding it. He was talking, of course, about his own body, but they were trying to use that against him. Caiaphas finally asks Jesus to plainly say whether or not he is the Messiah, and Jesus agrees, yes, he is. He tells the truth. So they accuse him of blasphemy, and they condemn him to death. Guys, when I see the restraint that Jesus showed here, I know that I still have a lot of growing to do in my faith and in my Christian walk. You know, Jesus is God, and injustice angers him more than it angers me. I know it upsets me sometimes, but I have to remember, Jesus is God. He's completely holy. This angers him much more than it angers me. And when I see injustice and I see people distorting the truth, I know how upset I can get. I can just imagine how upsetting that would be to Jesus, who is God. And so I'm amazed at his patience. I'm even more amazed when I think of the bigger picture, and that is that Jesus, being God, actually has the power to do something about the things that frustrate him. I'm usually unable to do anything about the things that frustrate me, and I still get so worked up. Imagine if you had the power to do something. Imagine how much restraint that would take to not act when you see such injustice. Well, I'm amazed at Jesus. And even in this story, they're spitting in his face and they're hitting him and mocking him and telling him, "Go ahead, prophesy, who hit you, Messiah?" And he could have done that. That's the thing. He could have done that right there and shut them all up. He could have called fire down from heaven and just burnt them all up if he had wanted to. And so I'm amazed at his restraint. Remember, guys, when we talk about restraint, it's really all about surrender. It's all the same theme. Jesus was surrendered to the Father. He was surrendered to the Father's eternal plan rather than a short-term sort of distraction. And it's comforting for me to know that Jesus understood restraint and surrender. He knows that it's difficult. So when he calls us to do it, he understands how difficult it is. And he reminds us, just be committed to the Father, be committed to his eternal plan, allow him to work out his justice in the long run, and remember that he's in control. And so I want to leave you with that lesson today, guys. It's easier to surrender when you know someone is in control who is eventually going to make everything right.